GPeC Summit, welcome back. As usual, I have the big pleasure to have next to me Karl Gilis, the co-founder of AG Consult. Karl, welcome back.
It's my pleasure. It's always fun to be here. Nice venue this year.
It's always a pleasure to have you. By the way, how do you see the event this year?
It's great.
It's great, right?
Yeah, in the theater. So, well, I love to be on a stage like that. So it's a big upgrade from the crystal ballrooms. And as always, everything is perfectly organized. So, yeah, it's good. Audience seems happy too.
What was the best question you got?
That's always difficult. I think people were still in doubt, like, how can we... I was talking about customer centricity, and I think two questions were about how can you make sure that people think you're authentic and not bullshitting them, because sometimes it's easy just to use the outer layer of being customer-centric and that people don't believe what you're really doing and that you really care about them.
Because those who are now watching the video didn't attend the event. Let's resume the presentation in three key takeaways for them, to just take them and put them in action.
I think the overall idea, or what I started with, is that I think there's a lot of bullshit going around about digital transformation. And
digital innovation.
Yeah, the innovation and the transformation is so important. And what I pointed out is that when companies die, most of the time it's because they lose connection with their clients. They don't understand the frustrations of their clients anymore. And when you do research, it seems that the main reason, it's about 68% of people say it, why they stop being a client, is because they have the feeling that the company doesn't care about them. That the company treats them as a number. So that's why customer centricity is really, really important. So that's number one. Number two is, how can you do it? I talked about targeted service, asking one question at the right time on your website. One question is, why are you looking for a solution? Why do you want to buy this product? What I see on many websites is that the marketing copy is way too far for people, and people don't recognize themselves. I used the examples of a fridge and a carport, and most of the product descriptions, they talk about the product, but they don't talk about the customer. I'm looking for a carport because I hated to get into a hot car on a day like this, or in winter in a cold car that I have to scrape the ice from my windshield. I'm looking for a fridge because my current fridge broke down. It's not working anymore. And that first step is so important in your copy, that people can recognize, they understand my question. That's what a good salesperson...
My need, my problem.
That's what a good salesperson in a physical store would do. It's not just, I'm looking for a fridge and say, okay, this is our most expensive fridge, buy it. That would be a horrible salesperson. A good salesperson asks you a few questions and then understands your situation, and then he will sell something to you. And online you have to do the same thing.
Before going through all the questions I've prepared for you, let's explain to those watching, what does it mean to be customer-centric? What's the definition?
The definition is to really, everything you do, to put the customer at the center, at the heart of everything. I told a story about Kodak. You know, in my age, we grew up with Kodak. They were in the film industry, and everybody that took a photo used Kodak. When Kodak started, their slogan was, you push the button, we do the rest. That's customer centricity. You only have to push the button, we develop the film, we make the film, we do everything for you. And then the strange thing is that Kodak invented the digital camera in '75, way long before it became on the market, and they said, we are not going to put it on the market because the digital camera will kill the film business. And that's the moment that you know that the company lost touch with the customer. Because Kodak was not in the film business, Kodak was in the business of collecting memories, sharing memories. And the digital camera was a solution for that. And that's a very difficult thing, and that's a very thin line. Companies caring about themselves, about business, about selling stuff, or, hey, we care about you. And then
we understand you.
Understand. And if you give your visitors, your customers, what they're looking for, the questions to their answers, their fears, then you will sell to them. The best way of selling is not selling. And that's.
Speaking about selling, what's your take on writing persuasive product copy?
So important. That's so important.
And how important is the collaboration between the marketing team or the copywriting team and the sales team?
I think it's important. It depends, but we just finished working for an e-commerce company selling everything. And what I saw there was that the copywriters, they were horrible at their job
Okay.
because they
Why?
wanted to write copy.
Okay.
That they didn't think about the consumer, about the customer. During my talk, I gave an example about a terrace heater, a pasture heater, and in one of the products it was like, yeah, we have 2 heating systems, 5 kilowatt, 12 kilowatt. If you think it's too hot, then you turn it down to 5 kilowatt. And when you put it on full power, it consumes between 470 and 800 grams of gas. And the
And you're like-
diameter is 81 centimeter. And I'm like, fuck, nobody cares. And that's what
That's
you
too
get.
technical.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the copy that you get from your providers if you're not selling your own products. But it's about specifications. It's about bullshit copy. And then I showed another example where they said like, okay, this heater can heat evenings when the temperature drops to 15 degrees for 25 square meter. And it's like, now I understand. And if you put it on full power, it will consume about 2 euros per hour. And it's like, I understand. And that's the same thing as those 500 and 800 grams. They don't ring a bell. And that's what you should do for every single product. Understand what triggers your users, what do they want to know about the product, and that's so important. If you have a small company, your salespeople will probably know it. If you have a bigger company, just think about, put yourself in the place of a customer. And yeah,
And-
it's so important, so important.
And define some key messages that you.
And use the word you all the time. That's
You,
a simple trick.
you,
That's a simple
okay.
trick. It's not I and our terrace heater, it's like you can
You,
put
the
it,
customer.
Your terrace will be heated. It will cost you 2 euros. In that product description, I think we had 8 times the word you. In the boring product description, there was 1 time the word you.
What are other tips and tricks in terms of writing copy that really converts? Do you have for those watching the video?
Yeah, I think-
So you said that using
So you start from the frustration of the customer, and if you don't know what the frustration of the customer is, just ask it. We do a lot of surveys on the websites. It's on the product page. Are all questions answers? Do you have enough information? What is the main reason you don't buy this product? And when people buy a product, a survey, what is the main reason you bought it? And is there something you hesitated? And then you will understand what people are really looking for. And with those answers, you can rewrite your copy and make it even better. I think that's one of your questions is what is the important learning
Okay.
for the last 2 years? For me, that's one of the most important learnings for me the last 2 or 3 years. As usability people, we used to focus a lot on technical issues, design issues, is everything on the right place, and that was important, it still is important, but most websites are design-wise kind of okay now. And then we started to take away friction and to look at the solutions, and now it's like trying to understand why some people don't buy from you. And if we understand that, and why do they buy from a competitor, we can adapt our message, we can adapt. And it's okay if some people don't buy from you because you're too funny or you're using strong language. That's okay, but you have to find your tone of voice. You have to
iterate on it.
focus on that visitor. Otherwise, you will die. It's like, yeah.
What if you have a product that doesn't really solve a frustration or a problem?
Then you have a problem.
Then you have a problem.
Yeah, I think
What
you-
if it's a nice-to-have product or a nice-to-have app, for example?
Yeah.
Because that's different. And I know that
Yeah.
we have entrepreneurs who are, on the technical
Yeah.
side, developing tech
Well,
products.
Most of the time, that's a problem.
That's a
It's a
problem.
problem for your business. So if you're selling something like, stupid thing, toilet paper. Or,
Okay.
yeah. Don't go in that kind of business because the big e-commerce companies will take it. So if it's like very common things, don't do it. The big boys will kill you. And if you developed an app or made something that nobody is waiting for, then you have a problem. That's also, I think that was the ground layer of what I used, the UX pyramid. It's like, the first thing is like product market fit. Is there a market for your product? Then you'd have
Okay.
to do some research. That's a difficult one if you develop something new. And then you have to investigate that first client who bought it. Why did they buy it? And maybe what you thought was the main reason and how beautiful it is, they tell you something else. And then you have to adapt your message. And if
What-
there's no product market fit,
Then there is a problem. Yeah.
you talk about apps. I don't know. There are millions and millions of apps. I don't know the latest numbers, but there is less than 1% of all apps that are used more than 1,000 times. after 1 week of use.
So you really have to be very authentic or solve a real problem if you want to be.
Research in front. Are people waiting for this? It's not because you have a brilliant idea that it will work.
What if we have, for example, let's suppose that we're just starting on the e-commerce market. We have an MVP or a startup. How do we find that key marketing message, that tone of voice, the first copy that really converts? Do you have some processes, some techniques that you guys at your agency apply? And
Yeah, we do, but in the beginning it's always difficult. One thing I always say: just don't copy an existing thing, because it already exists. It's there for a reason. Try to find out something that you really believe in and that makes yourself unique. One of our missions with everything we do is that I want to make people laugh at least once or twice with every page on our website. Sometimes I use irony, I use a special kind of humor, so that means that a lot of people don't like me, but most of them are okay with it. That's my tone of voice. That's okay.
Okay.
If you want to please everybody, nobody will love you. You have to have people who really like you, don't like you. And then you have to, like I said, work with your clients once they come in. And in the beginning you have to adapt your message. You can't, there is no company in the world that started like bam. I'm sure that companies like Nike and Apple, that they changed over time. Oh, Nike, for example, is a brilliant company. Everybody knows Nike, everybody loves Nike. Nike never talks about their products in their advertising, never. It's always about just do it. Become a better version of yourself. They never talk about this shoe does this and this and this and blah, blah, never.
And it's a message that you'll never forget.
It's always about the customer, the consumer. You can reach your potential, you can have a happy life, just do it. And that's so important to see. You can sell without selling.
What else can you do with all these optimizations you do on the?
You can do a lot of things. And that's the beauty of it. But the problem is that so you can do the customer research. That's one thing. If you have enough visitors and enough sales on your website, you can start with A/B testing, and then you can discover a lot of things. And you can really see like, if I change this sentence with another one and I change my message towards this one, will it help me to sell more or not? And that's an important one. Always try to experiment. Always never stop evolving as a company. The moment you stop, you're going downwards. Always work, work, work.
What's your piece of advice in terms of experimentation and iterating on copy, on experiments, A/B testing? Because from our experience, from what we see, is that some companies, they tend to do so many things in the same time that sometimes it can be confusing, and you're drawing the.
So if you do A/B testing, you should really have a process. Not test on your gut feeling. Gut feeling is bullshit. On every show I do it, I show 2 versions and everybody in the audience is wrong. So it shows that your gut feeling is rubbish. So if you have done your research, that's the first thing. Where are the problems on my website? Where do I lose money? Where are people not doing what I expect? Then try to find out why is it, with the surveys, for example. And then you can have a good hypothesis.
Okay.
And then you can have a good A/B test. In your A/B test, you can change several things on one page, that's okay. But it should be things that change the behavior of your visitor. A lot of A/B tests are about, once again, the outer layer. Ooh, is red better than green? If I put this there? Nah, that's tweaking bullshit. You should go deeper. And how can I change that behavior that the customer believes me, that I change the way they think, and that they're like, wow, I want this product. That's the ultimate thing. That's selling. It's like, I want this. I need it now. And those are the copy things that you have to change.
How do you recommend them to, get into their customers' minds through surveys or through qualitative data, as in customer interviews?
It's both of them. You have some quantitative methods like the scroll heat maps, user heat maps, click heat maps. They're very good. They're there for fixing problems. So that's the first start. And then you have to go more in depth. I think the online surveys with open questions for us is like, wow, we get big results with it.
How many results are enough?
It depends.
It depends?
If it's like a general question, you can go to 200, 300 results. But if it's on one page and you have 10 results and 4 people say the same thing,
Then you have a pattern.
then you have to adapt it.
Okay.
Because then there's something missing. If it's only one person, then you have to use your brains. Like, is this a good question or is it this will be the exception? And you have to adapt your copy all the time. If you don't ask feedback, you can never improve. And then you can do user testing if you want. That's another method. But I think we love the surveys. It's like, I think
I can tell.
For us, it has become the most important method. And the beauty of it is, if you do a user test, you have 5 or 10 people. It's good, but it's mainly good to see, can they work with my website? Do they understand it? With a survey, you reach all your visitors. So that's a quantitative method, but because you ask an open question, you have a one-to-one relation with that visitor. So it's a nice mixture between quantitative and qualitative research.
Yes.
And the input you get is gold. It's unbelievable.
At GPeC, we talk a lot about trends. Do you think there are, trends in UX as well? I know you love this question, but you'll have to indulge me.
Most of the time I hate trends.
Okay.
And especially in UX, because most of the UX trends, they are about the outer layer. They are about visual things on the website. And
Let's call them different. Let's call them best practices.
Real best practices, real ones.
Okay.
The true guidelines, the true rules of usability. I think that will be your next question.
You're reading my mind, or what?
We had 20 years ago, there's still rules now. And there will be rules in 20 years' time. One of the most often asked questions to me is, "Wow, Karl, you live in a business that changes so fast, the internet, you have to adapt all the time." I'm like, for me, it's just the same. In 20 years, nothing has changed. Technologies have changed.
They
Came
improved.
from desktop to mobile, there will be voice search, so the outer layer has changed, technologies has changed, but what a person expects from a company has not changed. What makes people happy has not changed.
What's going to change in your speeches next year?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Damn. No, sometimes I have a feeling that I'm always telling the same story. And one of the other speakers today, Jerry McGovern, is one of my friends in business, but it was also one of my big inspirations, like 15 or 16 years ago. And we had a discussion yesterday about what frustrates you the most. And we were like, we're saying the same stuff for 20 years. And once again, the outer layer changes, but the focus on the customer, it's like what Amazon makes so successful. It's what Zappos is doing, Zalando, Airbnb. It's like customer centricity. Uber, it's very popular here in Romania. It became so successful because they took away frustrations that clients from classic taxi companies had. How can I get hold of a taxi? How do I know that the taxi will be there? When does it arrive? Can I pay with a credit card or not? How much will it cost? And Uber solved all those frustrations. And the taxi companies were angry. In Belgium, Uber is not allowed. They went to court.
They are angry here as well.
But they shouldn't be angry.
They shouldn't.
They should shoot themselves in the head and say, why didn't we think of it?
Yeah.
And that's the
Or
proof.
how can we adapt?
Yeah. When somebody in your business takes over your business, it means that you have failed. You have failed because you didn't see the frustrations of your customers. And that's why we all moved to Uber. They took away frustrations.
What's the latest thing you've learned from your customers, from online customers?
Taking away those frustrations. That's so important. That's the main thing. And if you stop doing that as a company, you're doomed. Then a competitor will rise and will take your market share. Always find out what makes them happy and what frustrates my customer base.
And to resume this interview, what's the best piece of advice you'd give to those watching who are just starting an online business-wise, of course?
Talk with your customers. That's
as simple as
Talk
that.
with your customers. Don't think you know it all. That was one of my biggest problems, like 10 or 15 years ago in this business. I thought, like, I know it all, and then later on I realized I was on top of Mount Stupidity. It's impossible to know it all. So talk to your customers. They give you your money, but it's not about money. It's about their loyalty. It's about their customership. So you have to understand what they like about your brand and what they don't like about your brand. Talk with them. Do it!
Do it now.
Yeah.
Just do it, like
Just
you
do
said.
It. No.
Karl, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
It was my pleasure.
Am I
Once
going
again.
to see you again next year?
Apparently, yes.
Apparently, yes. Okay. Talking about the same things, right?
Yeah. A different
I'm-
point of view, but I
Yeah,
will be back.
I'm sure it's going to be as adventurous as usual.
Always. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Nice
much.
being here.